At the beginning of the 21st century, the internet was like a storm sweeping the world, rapidly changing everyone's life. As an ordinary worker in a small town in the Midwest of the United States, I was not spared. My name is Liam Nolan. 10 years ago, when I married my wife Deb, our life was simple and happy. I worked in a factory in town and Deb was a teacher. Every morning, I would kiss Deb on the cheek as she made breakfast. In the evenings, we took walks together and talked about the day's events. On weekends, we invited friends over or drove to neighboring towns. However, the advent of the internet quietly changed everything. At first, it was just a new and interesting thing. Gradually, I realized that Deb began to rely more on the internet. She was no longer content to share her life with me, but became more and more addicted to online socializing and entertainment. I remember once coming home in a flurry of excitement to share something interesting with Deb at work, only to find her staring intently at the computer screen. I called her name, but she didn't even look up, just answered perfunctorily. At that moment, I felt a strange sense of alienation. At first, I thought it was temporary and tried to accept and adapt to the change. I learned to use email and even opened a social media account at Deb's encouragement. However, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't really fit into her online world. We started arguing, and the topic always centered on the amount of time she spent online. Whenever I voiced my frustration, she would always retort that I wasn't open-minded enough to keep up with the times. Gradually, our communication became less and less. At dinner, there was no more laughter at the table, but instead the cold clatter of knives and forks. Even on weekends, we seldom went out together because Deb always complained that she didn't have time to chat with her friends on the internet. I couldn't help but wonder if Deb's friends were really more attractive to her than I was to her. This skepticism was like a cold, bitter seed that quietly took root in my heart. I began to secretly observe her every move, the way she talked and behaved online. However, the more I asked, the more impatient she became. Sometimes, she simply picked up her computer and hid in the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room. I hate to admit it, but there's a rift between Deb and I, and it's all due to the intrusion of the internet in our lives. What was once a close companion has now drifted apart across screens and keyboards. I don't know how to fix this rift, and I'm not sure where it will lead us. The only thing I could do was to hope in vain that Deb would come back to me one day and face the pains and joys of life with me, just as she had in the past. But deep down, I have a faint feeling that something has changed, and I may not be able to go back to the old days. As time passed, the rift between Deb and I grew deeper and deeper. She became more and more addicted to the cyber world, and we communicated less and less. I began to wonder if there was someone or something in that virtual world that attracted her and even took my place in her heart. At first, I only occasionally caught glimpses of her words and expressions when she chatted with people online. Those smiles I had never seen before, those words that seemed familiar but unfamiliar, all made me feel uneasy. I tried to convince myself that it was just a feature of online communication and should not be overinterpreted. But deep inside, the seed of doubt had already sprouted. Gradually, I began to check Deb's browsing history intentionally or unintentionally, and even logged into her social media accounts when she wasn't looking. Whenever I found some suspicious clues, my anxiety would increase. I began to question Deb about the identities of her online friends and began to control the amount of time she spent online. We fought about it, but she always took it personally and thought I was making a big deal out of it. Once, I even found some ambiguous words in her account. When I confronted her, she became angry and accused me of invading her privacy. She said it was just a harmless joke, but I couldn't get over it. I started going through her cell phone, checking her email, and even secretly checking her computer when she went to the bathroom. I became more and more suspicious, more and more sensitive, and even an unintentional look from her could make me think crazy thoughts. Deb and I's fights spread from internet issues to all aspects of our lives. I accused her of not caring about her family anymore, and she countered by saying I was too old-fashioned. We started cold wars and slept in separate rooms. The atmosphere in our home became so tense that even the simplest of exchanges turned into arguments. I have tried to salvage the relationship by asking her to go out for a walk, hoping to bring back the good old days. But every time we went out, She was distracted and her cell phone never left her hand. I can feel that her heart has long been away from me. What makes me even more desperate is that once, when she thought I was asleep, I inadvertently glimpsed her on her cell phone to send a message to a person called Bob. Those ambiguous words, like a sharp blade, stabbed me in the heart. At that moment, I realized that the trust between Deb and me had been completely shattered. The arguments, misunderstandings, and suspicions had pushed our marriage to the edge of a cliff. Our relationship had been consumed by those virtual binary data. I tried to struggle, tried to fight, but every effort was like a futile ant shaking a tree. In the end, I chose to let go. Deb and I signed divorce papers, ending a marriage that had already existed in name only. Looking at her cold signature, I felt desolate inside. Once, I thought our love was indestructible and could withstand the erosion of time and reality. However, I underestimated the power of the internet and the fragility of trust. When she chose to give her heart to the virtual end of the network, our marriage, in fact, has come to an end. On the day of my divorce, I stood alone in my home. Looking around, everything was so familiar and yet so strange. I suddenly realized that I had not only lost my wife, but also my old self. The Liam who used to be full of hope and trust in love had been left in the past forever. For a while after the divorce, I lived like a zombie. I went to work mechanically at the factory, then shut myself up at home and used alcohol to numb the pain. I thought that with enough time, I would be able to get over the loss of Deb. However, I underestimated the effect that man, Bob, had on my heart. One day, while wandering down the street, I overheard Deb walking with a man. They were talking and laughing and looking at each other, just like Deb and I did back then. But when the man turned his face, I felt my blood curdle. It was him, Bob, the man who was flirting with my wife on the internet. At that moment, an unprecedented anger swept through my body. I felt completely betrayed and humiliated. All reason was thrown out of my mind at that moment, and only one thought remained in my mind. I would make him pay. I followed them to a cafe. When Bob went to the restroom, I quietly followed him in. When I saw him humming a tune with a relaxed face, I couldn't control my emotions any longer. I rushed up to him and beat him wildly, hissing in anger. Bob was obviously not expecting this sudden attack and tried to fight back, but he soon succumbed to the force of my attack. When I saw that he was no longer able to fight back and that his face was bruised and swollen, I felt a twisted sense of pleasure. I looked down on him as if he were an enemy I had defeated. The next moment, however, I felt someone hugging me from behind. I turned around and saw that it was an employee of the cafe. More people poured in, and it was a very chaotic scene for a while. I was taken to the police station by the cafe people. In the interrogation room, facing the strange gaze of the officers, I suddenly realized what a serious mistake I had made. My impulsive retaliation not only did not bring back anything, but also brought my life to an even deeper bottom. At the subsequent trial, I was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment for intentional assault. When the judge read the verdict, I felt a wave of despair and remorse. I knew that not only had I lost my wife, but now I had also lost my freedom. The moment I put on the prison uniform and was sent to prison, I really realized what a low point my life had reached. The world behind bars was filled with despair, violence, and endless waiting. I began to regret my impulsiveness that day, and I regretted not controlling my emotions. But it was already too late. On my first night in prison, I tossed and turned and found it difficult to sleep. Through the bars of the window, I looked at the stars in the sky and felt more lonely and helpless than ever before. I knew that I had to pay for my mistakes, but I didn't know if I would be able to regain my hope for life when I walked out of the prison. In the darkness, I silently wept and felt remorse for my stupidity and impulsiveness. I wished that I could turn back time, so that I could go back to the moment before Deb left and cherish our relationship. However, I knew that this was a luxury that could never be realized. Life in prison is tougher than I ever imagined. Every day, I faced the cold walls, rigid iron beds, and endless waiting. The faces of the prisoners were filled with despair, anger, and numbness. At first, I was just like them. I was so confused all day long. I didn't know what the meaning of my life was. However, just when I was about to give up on myself, I met Dave, an old convict who had spent 10 years in prison. The first time we met, he said to me, "Son, I can see myself in your eyes." At first, I didn't take Dave's words seriously. I didn't understand how he, a murderer, could understand my pain. Gradually, through talking with Dave, I began to re-examine my life. Dave told me that when he was young, he had been ambitious, but his impulsiveness had led him to make a big mistake that had ruined his future. In prison, he began to reflect on his own behavior and began to learn to take responsibility. He said that everyone makes mistakes. The key is to learn to face and correct them. Listening to Dave, I began to realize that I couldn't dwell on the pain of losing Deb forever. I had to accept the reality of my mistakes and face the future with courage. I began to try to change myself, to participate in the prison's education program, and to learn new skills. Dave was like a mentor to me in prison. He taught me a lot about being a human being and helped me regain my confidence in life. Whenever I felt depressed and hopeless, he could always help me with a simple sentence or two to get me back on my feet. Gradually, under Dave's influence, I began to learn how to get along with other inmates and how to find warmth in difficult situations. I began to realize that although I had lost a lot, life went on. I had to learn to let go of the past and embrace the future. The 2 years I spent in prison were the darkest, but also the most important time of my life. It made me thoroughly reflect on my behavior and taught me that impulsiveness and violence can never solve problems. It taught me to accept myself and how to find hope in desperate situations. More importantly, it allowed me to meet friends like Dave. He told me from his own experience that there are always ups and downs in life, and the key is to learn to get back up after falling down. He made me realize that no matter what happened in the past, the future is always worth looking forward to. When I finally finished my time in prison and walked out, I felt a sense of relief that I had never felt before. Although there was still a long way to go, I knew that I was no longer the same Liam who was easily controlled by his emotions. Prison has changed the course of my life in a special way. Standing under the sky of freedom, I breathed in the fresh air. I knew that I had to walk out from the shadow of the past and face the challenges of the future with a brand new self. I owe it all to Dave, who taught me how to find the light in the darkness and how to regain hope in the midst of despair. The moment I stepped out of prison and into the free world, I felt a sense of confusion that I had never felt before. Although I had completed my rehabilitation in prison, I knew that the real test had just begun. I had to readapt to society and find my place again. When I was first released from prison, it was one of the hardest times of my life. My old friends were no longer in contact with me, and my family shunned me. I felt like a social outcast, with no one to turn to and no help. I started looking for a job, but I couldn't get one. People saw my criminal record and shunned me. Countless times, I felt desperate and frustrated, and even began to doubt my determination to get my life back. Just when I was about to give up, Dave surprised me. We kept in touch after I got out of jail. He told me that he had found a job in a factory and was willing to recommend me to try it. Although I was hesitant, I decided to seize the opportunity. Dave introduced me to the factory. To my surprise, the owner of the factory was willing to give me a chance. He said that he believed that everyone deserved a second chance, and as long as I was willing to work hard, he was willing to give me a platform to start over. Hearing my boss's words moved me to tears. It was the first time I felt trust and acceptance from others since I was released from prison. I secretly vowed to seize this opportunity and prove to myself that I had changed. In the factory, I worked hard and did my best to adapt to the new environment. Gradually, I began to integrate into the group and made new friends. Instead of alienating me because of my past, they gave me a lot of help and support. As time went by, I showed my ability at work. My diligence and hard work were recognized by my boss, and I began to be given more responsibilities. Slowly, I regained my confidence and motivation in life. After work, I started learning new skills, reading books at the library, and participating in various community activities. I wanted to enrich myself and become a better person. Every day, I feel that I am growing up and getting out of the darkness of the past little by little. Gradually, I began to rebuild my life. I moved into a small apartment and began to learn to take care of myself. Although I was still struggling to make ends meet, I felt more content than ever before. I knew that I had worked hard for it and that I had regained control of my life. When I think back to the confusion and uncertainty I felt when I first got out of prison, I have a lot of feelings. Without Dave's help and the trust of the factory owner, I would never have gotten out of that predicament. They gave me the courage to start over, and they gave me hope for my life. Although the road ahead is still long, I have already found a way forward. I know that as long as I stick to my beliefs and take action to change myself, one day I will be able to say goodbye to the past and become a new me. In the process, I have learned to be grateful. I am thankful to Dave, to my boss who is willing to give me a chance, and to everyone in my life who has given me help and support. It's them who made me find the meaning of life again and gave me the courage to face every challenge in the future. A few months into my new life, an unexpected surprise came. I was working at the factory as usual when I got a call from Dave. He told me that his daughter Angie had graduated from law school and decided to come to our town to work. He wanted me to help her adjust to the new environment. I gladly accepted Dave's request. After all, he had helped me in the worst of times, and I wanted to return the favor in my own way. When I first met Angie, I was a little nervous. As an ex-con, I wasn't sure if Dave's daughter would want to socialize with me. But to my surprise, Angie was very friendly to me. She offered me her hand, smiled, and said, "You must be the Liam my father always talked about." Angie's friendliness warmed my heart. I showed her around the town and introduced her to the environment and people. During our conversation, I realized that Angie is a very good and kind girl. She has a good sense of humor and insight, and she cares a lot about social issues. Gradually, Angie and I became friends. We began to have dinner together and discuss problems we encountered in our work and life. I felt very comfortable in front of her. I could express myself without fear of being judged. As our relationship progressed, I began to realize that I had developed a special feeling for Angie. Every time I saw her, my heart would beat faster. I began to look forward to every encounter with her and began to care about her thoughts and feelings. But at the same time, I felt very conflicted. As a person with a criminal record, I wasn't sure if I was qualified to love a beautiful girl like Angie. I was afraid that my past would become a barrier between us, that I would hurt the people around me again. I began to alienate Angie, consciously or unconsciously, trying to suppress my feelings. But Angie seemed to have read my mind. One day, she reached out to me and asked me if I was in trouble. In the face of Angie's sincere concern, I could no longer hide my heart. I confessed my past, my criminal record, and my life in prison. I told her that I wasn't sure if I was qualified to love her because I was afraid that my past would ruin her future. To my surprise, Angie didn't alienate me because of my confession. On the contrary, she gave me a big hug. She told me that everyone makes mistakes. The key is to have the courage to correct them. She said she saw how hard I had worked to change myself, and she believed I was a new person. Angie's words touched me deeply. Her trust and acceptance made me feel warmer than I had ever felt before. At that moment, I knew I had fallen in love with this girl. I was determined to repay her trust with my own actions and to spend my life guarding this hard-earned love. After that, Angie and I got even closer. We started dating and planning our future. Every day, I feel extremely happy and satisfied. I know that with Angie's love and support, I can become a better person. Angie's appearance was the best surprise in my life. She not only gave me love, but also gave me the courage to be reborn. Every day with her gives me a sense of meaning and hope. I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, as long as she is by my side, I am fearless. Ever since Angie and I got together, life seems to be perfect. Every morning, I go to work with great anticipation, knowing that after work, I can spend quality time with Angie. We went to the movies, walked in the park, and talked about problems in life and work. With Angie by my side, I feel happier and more satisfied than ever. However, life wasn't always easy. As our relationship progressed, a number of issues began to surface. First of all, my past was always an unavoidable topic. Although Angie accepted my past, I knew that not everyone in this society could be as forgiving as she was. Whenever we appeared in public together, I could feel people's strange gazes. Those stares seemed to constantly remind me that I was once a criminal someone who didn't deserve to be loved. This kind of pressure made me feel very inferior and uneasy. I began to doubt whether I was really worthy of Angie and began to fear that my past would ruin her future. There were times when I even wanted to run away and leave Angie so that she could have a better life. But whenever I was in such a mood, Angie was always keenly aware of it. She would gently hug me and tell me that no matter what others thought, I was always the best in her heart. Her love and support gave me the courage to face everything. In addition to my past, our plans for the future are also a challenge. Angie is an aspiring lawyer whose vision is to be a voice for the underprivileged and to fight for social justice. I, on the other hand, had found a stable job in a factory, but I knew that this was not the end of the road for me. I also want to make something of myself and contribute to society. We started discussing our future, and Angie encouraged me to start studying again and consider enrolling in evening classes to upgrade my education and skills. At first, I was hesitant. After all, I was no longer young, and it would take a lot of courage to go back to school. But Angie told me that there is no age limit for learning, and as long as I have the determination, I will definitely succeed. With Angie's encouragement, I enrolled in the local community college. Every night, after work, I would go to school and attend classes. Although the learning process was hard, I was motivated when I thought about the future of Angie and I. Angie also gave me a lot of help, helping me review my homework, giving me puzzles, and encouraging me to keep getting better. Gradually, I made progress in my studies. My self-confidence is also growing. I have come to believe that if we work together, we will be able to overcome any difficulties and create a better future together. Of course, life's challenges don't stop there. We have to face the pressure of work and financial difficulties. But every time, we work hand in hand to resolve all the conflicts with love and understanding. We know that as long as we are together, nothing is impossible. Throughout this journey, I am deeply grateful for Angie's presence. She not only gave me love, but also the direction and strength of my life. With her, I have found the meaning of life and the goal to strive for. I know that the road ahead is still long, but as long as she is by my side, I have no fear. After all the challenges and trials, Angie and I have grown stronger and more mature in our relationship. We both know that each other is the indispensable half of our lives. Therefore, on a romantic night, I proposed to Angie, and she agreed without hesitation. From that moment on, we started planning our wedding. It was a joyful but challenging process. We had to decide on the date, venue, guest list, choose the dress, order the cake, and organize a series of ceremonies and events. Every detail needs to be discussed and decided together. In the process, I began to get more in touch with Angie's family. At first, this made me feel a little nervous and uneasy. After all, I was a person with a criminal record, and I wasn't sure if they would be able to accept me. But to my surprise, Angie's family was very kind to me. They were able to look at my past and see how much I've worked hard and changed. Angie's mother, Mary, is a very gentle and loving woman. She came to me and told me that she understood my past and was proud of the changes I had made. She said that Angie was lucky to have met me, and Mary's words touched me deeply and made me feel the warmth of a family. Angie's father, Dave, has also been a great support to me. As my best friend in prison, he has seen me grow and change. He gave me a lot of advice and help in planning the wedding. He told me that as Angie's husband, I have to learn to take responsibility and accountability and to spend my life caring for and loving her. In my relationship with Angie's family, I gradually let go of the burden in my heart. I began to feel that family is not only a connection of blood, but also a belonging of the heart, and Angie's family became my family as well. Their acceptance and love made me feel warm and happy like never before. The process of preparing for my wedding also made me reflect on my past and begin to reconcile with myself. I realized that although I had made mistakes, I had paid for them, and through my own efforts, I had become a better person again. I can't let the shadow of the past hang over my life forever. With Angie's encouragement, I decided to tell my story to all the guests at the wedding. I wanted to tell them that everyone can make mistakes, but as long as you have the courage to correct them, you can always get back on your feet. I hope that my experience will inspire and encourage those who have also fallen. The wedding day is getting closer and closer, and I am getting more and more excited. I am looking forward to making my lifelong vows with Angie in the presence of all my friends and family. I look forward to starting a new chapter in my life with Angie. The day before the wedding, I came to the church alone. I sat quietly in the pews and thought about the journey. I remembered the confusion and uncertainty of the past, the reflection and growth in prison, and the reconstruction and struggle after regaining my freedom. Every moment is engraved in my heart and has become an indelible memory in my life. At that moment, I felt a sense of peace and relief that I had never felt before. I knew that whatever had happened in the past was history. What mattered was that I now had Angie's love, my family's support, and the courage to start over. I am ready to take on every challenge in the future with a new me. Wedding bells are about to ring and my new life is about to begin. On this special day, I would like to say thank you to all those who have helped and supported me. It is your love and encouragement that gave me the courage to be reborn. I would also like to say thank you to Angie for being in my life and for giving me love and hope. Life after marriage was a time of happiness and sweetness for Angie and I. We moved into a new apartment and started a life that was truly our own. We moved into a new apartment and started a life that was truly our own. Every morning, we would wake up and kiss each other and go to work hand in hand. In the evening, we would share the day's events, discuss problems we encountered at work, and plan for our future. However, life is full of surprises. One day, a few months later, Angie told me the news that surprised me. She was pregnant. When I heard the news, I felt a joy and excitement that I had never felt before. I was about to become a father, and we were about to have a new baby. From that moment on, we entered a new phase in our lives. We started to prepare for the baby's arrival. We went shopping for baby products together, read books on parenting, and discussed our future parenting style. Every detail was filled with joy and anticipation. As Angie's belly grows bigger every day, my heart becomes softer and softer. Whenever I touch her belly and feel the baby's movements, I feel an indescribable happiness and satisfaction. I began to envision what would happen after the baby was born, and I began to imagine our happy life as a family of three. Of course, the process of preparing for a new baby wasn't always easy. Angie had her ups and downs, and she had her ups and downs. But every time, I patiently calmed her down and took care of her. We went to maternity checkups together, attended yoga classes together, and shared every special moment together. As the due date approached, we became more and more nervous and expectant. We began final preparations, practicing breathing techniques and birthing positions. We also started to think about the baby's name, wanting to give him a special and meaningful name. Finally, on a beautiful night, we welcomed our baby. When I held my son for the first time, I felt an unprecedented sense of responsibility and mission. I knew that from this moment on, my life had a new meaning. I wasn't just Liam, I wasn't just Angie's husband, I was a father, a man who would guard and guide this new life. The arrival of our son has brought endless joy and happiness to our life. Watching him grow up day by day, learning to roll over, to crawl, to talk, every moment makes me feel extremely proud and satisfied. Angie and I have grown and learned in the process. We have learned patience, responsibility, and unconditional love. As time went by, our lives became more and more normal. I progressed in my work and eventually became a factory manager, and Angie became a successful lawyer, fighting for the rights of the underprivileged. Our son, under our care, grew up to be a bright and kind child. Whenever I think back on the past, I feel a deep sense of gratitude. I am grateful that life has given me a second chance, that Angie has given me love and hope, and that my son has given me a new meaning in life. Although we have experienced many difficulties and setbacks along the way, in the end, with love and perseverance, we have created our own happiness. Now, as a family of three, we are having a picnic in the park. Looking at Angie's and my son's smiling faces as they play in the sun, I feel a sense of fulfillment and happiness that I have never felt before. I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, as long as we are together, nothing is impossible. This is my story, a story of mistakes and redemption, of love and hope. I hope that my experience can inspire and motivate everyone who is struggling. Remember, no matter what you have been through in the past, don't give up hope. As long as you have the courage to change, as long as you have the power of love, you will be able to create your own bright future. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.